Commander Varix Newell stood at the panoramic viewport of Kyranic's command center, his four arms folded in varying degrees of irritation. The pale green sun of Torva 9 cast an eerie glow across his iridescent scales as he watched his troops perform drills with mathematical precision in the courtyard below. Perfect. Orderly, as all things should be under Apex control. Commander. Urgent report from Sector 7. Lieutenant Jax burst through the doorway, his secondary breathing gills flaring in agitation. Our sensors detected an unauthorized entry. The security footage confirms it's a human, sir. Varix turned slowly, a low rumble of laughter building in his throat. A human? One human? On the most fortified military installation in the entire Orion Spur? Are you certain your sensors haven't malfunctioned again, Lieutenant? Absolutely certain, sir. The Deathworlder somehow bypassed our quantum barriers. Jax's voice wavered. It's a female. Commander Varix snorted, sending a spray of bioluminescent droplets across his control panel. Oh, even more terrifying. A female Deathworlder. Shall we evacuate the entire planet, then? He slammed one of his four fists onto the nearest console. The creatures barely survived their own planet's ridiculous conditions through dumb luck and stubborn biology. They're not intelligent enough to pose a genuine threat to our military superiority. The lieutenant shifted uncomfortably. Sir, Central Command advises caution when dealing with Deathworlders. Their adaptability is unpredictable. Their adaptability is irrelevant, Varix hissed, stretching to his full 9-foot height. They're outnumbered, outgunned, and outdated. This human is probably lost, confused, and terrified. He grabbed his ceremonial battle harness from its mount. Assemble my personal squad. 20 of our finest warriors should be sufficient overkill to handle one soft, squishy human female. I want this embarrassing security breach resolved before dinner. As Varix strode toward the door, Jax cleared his throat. There's one more thing, sir. The human appears to be completely unarmed. Varix paused, his brow ridge furrowing. Unarmed? Well, that just makes this the most boring hunt in my distinguished career. He shook his head dismissively. Deathworlder or not, nobody infiltrates an Apex facility and lives to tell about it, especially not without weapons. Little did Commander Varix know just how wrong he was about to be. The Kyranic's military compound sprawled across the northern hemisphere of Torva 9 like an angular metallic cancer. Gleaming spires of neo-titanium pierced the atmosphere, connected by a labyrinthine network of fortified bridges and transport tubes. This wasn't just any military base. This was the crown jewel of the Apex Dominion's military might, a statement of absolute power carved into the face of a conquered world. As Commander Varix descended in the gravity lift toward the armory, he basked in the holographic displays showcasing the Dominion's glorious history. 87 star systems had fallen to the Apex in just 3 centuries. 87 civilizations that now served as vassal states, providing resources, technology, and unquestioning obedience to their scaled overlords. The Apex evolutionary path had been perfect, their ancestors developing on a lush, temperate homeworld with minimal predators and abundant resources. Natural selection had favored intelligence and cooperation rather than brute survival traits. The Air Society had advanced in elegant, logical steps toward galactic supremacy. And then they discovered the Deathworlders. Can you believe humans evolved on a planet with 1.3 times our standard gravity? Lieutenant Jax remarked, scrolling through the threat assessment database. Their world is riddled with thousands of toxic plant species, extreme temperature variations, and atmospheric oxygen levels that would cause spontaneous combustion on most civilized planets. Their biology makes no sense, Varix agreed, selecting his personal sidearm from the weapons rack. Multiple redundant organs, a skeleton made of calcium deposits reinforced with impact-absorbing collagen, and an immune system so aggressive it sometimes attacks itself. They're walking biological catastrophes. The gravity lift deposited them at the Tactical Operations Center, where 3-dimensional maps of the compound glowed with security alerts. The Cold War with humanity has been at a stalemate for nearly a decade. General Thrix's recorded briefing played as they entered. Her massive form dominated the holographic display. They claimed to want peaceful coexistence, but we know better. Any species forged in such hellish conditions can only understand violence. Their diplomatic overtures are merely stalling tactics while they build their fleets. Varix nodded in agreement as he strapped on his final pieces of armor. The Deathworlders had been contained to their small cluster of systems, hemmed in by apex outposts and deterred by superior numbers. This uneasy peace had held because humans understood they were outmatched. They were clever, yes, but ultimately primitive compared to the apex dominion. So what exactly is one lone human hoping to accomplish here? Varix mused, checking his weapon's charge. Perhaps this is some pathetic attempt at showing courage, a suicide mission to intimidate us. He laughed at the absurdity. How perfectly on brand for a species that glorifies individual heroics over collective wisdom. Lieutenant Jax looked less certain. The diplomatic attaché warned that humans are most dangerous when cornered or outnumbered. Perhaps we should. Spare me the evolutionary fairy tales, Varix interrupted. Deathworlder or not. I'll show you how quickly this human's supposed adaptability fails against superior numbers and training. Track her location. The hunt begins now. The assembly hall echoed with the rhythmic clicking of combat harnesses as Commander Varix's elite strike team prepared for what they considered to be the most insulting assignment of their careers. 20 of us, Captain Moores grumbled, adjusting his neural interface. 20 elite warriors to capture one squishy human. This is beneath our status. Consider it a training exercise with a live target, Varix replied, pacing before his assembled team. Boring, perhaps, but necessary. Squad leaders, activate your tactical displays. Holographic readouts blossomed around each of the 20 Apex warriors. Their battle armor, a masterpiece of Dominion engineering, made them living weapons. Each suit contained microfabricators capable of generating specialized ammunition on demand, adaptive camouflage layers that bent light around their wearers, and neural interfaces that allowed for thought-speed reactions. Their primary weapons were plasma pulse rifles with adjustable output settings ranging from stun to vaporized small moon. Our target is moving through Maintenance Tunnel 47B, Lieutenant Jax announced, projecting a three-dimensional map of the compound. A small red dot blinked steadily as it moved through the schematic. Curiously slow movement for a creature supposedly adapted to high gravity. Perhaps injured? Or lost? Varix sneered. Tactical formation Delta 9. Teams of 4 will cover all exit points while I lead the primary intercept squad. Remember, we want this Deathworlder alive for questioning, at least initially. The strike team moved with practiced precision through the compound, their movements a testament to centuries of military doctrine refinement. They communicated through subvocal implants, coordinating their approach with mathematical perfection. This wasn't merely a capture mission, it was a demonstration of apex superiority. Target has reached the central atmospheric processing hub, reported Scout Leader Kens, moving to wait. Something's wrong with my scanner. Varix frowned. Explain. It's showing the target in 3 places simultaneously. Must be a malfunction. Check your equipment. We can't have technical failures. During Varix's command was cut short as the lights in their section flickered and died, plunging the corridor into darkness before emergency lighting activated with a dull red glow. Status report. Varix demanded. Sir, communication with teams 2 and 3 just went offline, Captain Moores reported, his secondary eyes widening with concern. And there's something wrong with the environmental sensors. They're reporting toxic atmospheric contamination, but our internal analyzers show normal readings. Someone's hacking our systems, Varix concluded, mandibles clicking in irritation. Basic infiltration tactics. Teams 4 and 5, secure the central server node. The rest of you, switch to autonomous targeting systems and disable network connectivity. This human thinks they can outsmart Apex technology? Lieutenant Jax approached cautiously. "Commander, my weapons charge just dropped to 0. It was at full capacity 2 minutes ago." One by one, similar reports flooded in, targeting systems failing, communication arrays going silent. Even their armor's climate control systems began malfunctioning, causing uncomfortable temperature fluctuations. "Impossible," Varix hissed, checking his own systems. His weapon still functioned, but the neural interface was sluggish, delayed. "No human has the technology to bypass our security protocols this efficiently. Unless... A cold realization settled in Varix's gut. He'd been thinking of this all wrong. This wasn't a clumsy infiltration or a suicide mission. This was a trap, and they had walked right into it. "New strategy," he commanded. "Form a defensive perimeter. The human hasn't hacked our systems, she's done something else. Something we're not seeing." As the words left his mouth, the ventilation system hummed to life with unusual intensity. Varix felt an odd sensation in his breathing slits, a subtle, almost imperceptible change in the air composition. "Face shields," he barked, but even as his troops rushed to comply, he knew it might already be too late. Whatever game this Deathworlder was playing, the rules had changed dramatically. They found her in the central hydroponics bay, of all places. The human female stood with her back to them, apparently admiring the bioluminescent Jackson ferns that provided supplemental oxygen for the compound. No weapons, no armor, not even a basic environmental suit. Just standard-issue human clothing, dark fabric covering most of her pale, fur-less skin. "Target acquired," Captain Moores whispered through the remaining functional comm channel. "Standing orders, Commander?" Varix raised a closed fist, signaling his troops to hold position while he assessed the situation. Something felt wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. This wasn't how infiltration missions were supposed to end, with the target casually examining plant life. "Human," Varix called out, his translator converting his clicks and hisses into standard galactic common. "But you are surrounded by the elite forces of the Apex Dominion. Surrender immediately, or be neutralized." The Deathworlder turned slowly, and Varix got his first good look at the infamous species. She was disappointingly unremarkable. Small, barely reaching the height of an adolescent apex. Her frame was obscenely fragile-looking, lacking even basic exoskeletal protection. 2 spindly arms ended in 5-digited appendages that seemed absurdly delicate. Her face featured forward-facing eyes and a disturbing lack of protective mandibles. The only notable feature was the brightly colored head fur, an alarming shade of red that rippled slightly in the recycled air currents. And yet, despite all physical evidence suggesting she should be terrified, the human smiled. A deliberate baring of blunt teeth that didn't register as either aggression or fear in Apex body language interpreters. "Lieutenant Maya Blackwell, Earth Diplomatic Corps," she announced, her voice surprisingly melodious for such a primitive vocal apparatus. "I was wondering when you'd find me, Commander Varix. I've been waiting nearly 3 hours. Your security response time needs serious improvement." Varix felt his secondary heart accelerate in anger. The audacity. The sheer disrespect. His neural implant advised caution, but he stepped forward, towering over the human. "You've committed an act of war by infiltrating this installation," he snarled. "Your species' diplomatic status will not protect you from interrogation." Lieutenant Blackwell shrugged, an alien gesture that Varix's cultural database translated as casual dismissal. "That's fair. I surrender completely to your custody." She extended her arms, wrists together in the universal posture of submission. No resistance whatsoever. Captain Moores approached with restraint cuffs, his movements cautious despite the human's apparent cooperation. "Sir, this seems too straightforward." Varix agreed silently. His entire military career had been built on recognizing patterns, anticipating threats, and identifying traps. Every instinct owned across 12 successful campaigns screamed that this situation was dangerously abnormal. "No resistance? No demands? No apparent mission objective achieved? It violated every tactical doctrine he understood. Search her thoroughly, then prepare for transport back to interrogation, Varix ordered, keeping all 4 arms near his weapons. And somebody get a biohazard team down here. I want her scanned for hidden technology, weapons, pathogens, anything. As 2 officers secured Blackwell with energy restraints, she looked directly at Varix with an expression his cultural database couldn't properly interpret. Something between amusement and pity? Commander, she said quietly, I'm genuinely curious, did none of your scientists ever wonder why humans evolved without natural weapons or armor on a death world? The question lingered in the air between them, and despite himself, Varix felt the first tremor of genuine unease slither down his spine. The return journey through the compound's sterile corridors was unnervingly silent. Lieutenant Blackwell walked with an easy confidence that continued to grate on Varix's nerves. 4 guards surrounded her, weapons at the ready despite her restraints, while the remaining squad formed a protective perimeter. Their formation was textbook perfect, except for the occasional stumble from Sergeant Krell, whose movements had become increasingly uncoordinated over the past 6 minutes. Sergeant, is there a problem with your motor functions? Varix demanded as Krell's right secondary arm twitched visibly. No, Commander, just a slight muscle spasm. Probably from the recent training exercises. Krell attempted to straighten his posture, but instead lurched awkwardly to one side, nearly colliding with another soldier. Lieutenant Blackwell tilted her head. Actually, Commander, he's experiencing early onset paralysis of his tertiary motor neurons. The tingling sensation likely started in his breathing slits about 11 minutes ago. Am I right, Sergeant? Krell's compound eyes widened in shock. Before Varix could respond, Captain Morse dropped to one knee, his weapon clattering to the floor as his primary arms went limp. What's happening? Morse gasped, mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. I can't feel my extremities. So Varix whirled toward the human, plasma pistol activated and aimed directly at her head. What have you done? He hissed. Fascinating evolutionary quirk, the apex respiratory system, Blackwell remarked casually, as if discussing the weather. 4 separate breathing channels, each specialized for different atmospheric conditions. Brilliant adaptation for your ancestral environment, but creates a remarkable vulnerability to certain compounds, particularly those that bind to your Kulian receptors. Around them, 3 more soldiers collapsed, their limbs twitching helplessly. Varix felt it now, too, a subtle numbness creeping up from his secondary breathing slits toward his central nervous system. His aim wavered. Impossible, he growled. Our scanners would have detected any toxin or biological agent. Blackwell shook her head, still maddeningly calm. Not toxin. Not biological. It's a synthetic compound specifically designed to temporarily disable apex muscle coordination without causing permanent damage. And no, your scanners wouldn't detect it because it's inert until it contacts the specific enzyme present in your breathing membranes. Another soldier fell. Then 2 more. Varix struggled to maintain his combat stance as the weakness spread through his limbs. Rage and disbelief warred within him. You couldn't possibly know enough about our physiology to engineer such a compound, he snarled, though doubt had begun to creep into his voice. Oh, but I do, Blackwell replied, effortlessly slipping her hands from the restraints that had never actually been properly secured. I'm not a soldier, Commander. I'm a xenobiologist specializing in comparative evolutionary adaptations. Your species has been my focus for nearly 6 years. Lieutenant Jax, one of the few still standing, fired a wild shot that went wide, scorching the wall beside Blackwell's head. She didn't flinch. I wouldn't waste your energy, she advised. The compound affects fine motor control first. You won't be able to aim accurately within the next 40 seconds. As if to prove her point, Varix's primary right hand spasmed violently, nearly causing him to drop his weapon. Across the corridor, soldiers were slumping against walls or sprawling on the floor, their limbs unresponsive. The paralysis will spread from your extremities inward, Blackwell continued, now calmly stepping over fallen Apex warriors. Voluntary muscle control will fail completely within 4 minutes, though your autonomous functions like breathing and heart rate will remain unaffected. I'm not here to kill anyone. Varix fought against the encroaching numbness, forcing his voice to work. How long he managed to ask. The effects? Temporary. 8 hours, give or take. Enough time for us to have a proper conversation. She approached Varix as his knees finally buckled. He collapsed against the wall, sliding slowly to the floor while maintaining eye contact with the Deathworlder. You see, Commander, Maya said, crouching to meet his gaze, humans didn't evolve natural weapons because we're something far more dangerous. She tapped her temple with one finger. We became tool makers, problem solvers. We learned to analyze our enemies and exploit their weaknesses rather than relying on brute strength or natural armor. As darkness crept into the edges of Varix's vision, her final words echoed with terrible clarity. And that, Commander, is why you never saw this coming. Commander Varix Null lay propped against the corridor wall, his mighty body betrayed by unresponsive limbs. Around him, his elite squad, 20 of the Dominion's finest warriors, were similarly incapacitated. Their advanced armor now nothing more than decorative shells containing helpless occupants. And standing amid this tableau of fallen predators was the prey that had outsmarted them all. Comfortable? Maya asked, dragging a storage crate over and sitting across from Varix. The paralytic compound allows for full consciousness and speech. I specifically designed it that way so we could have this conversation. You'll never leave this facility alive, Varix managed, his mandibles struggling to form words properly. Maya smiled that strange, toothless expression that Varix was beginning to recognize as neither aggression nor submission, but something uniquely human. I don't need to escape, Commander. In fact, leaving was never part of my mission parameters. She leaned forward, elbows resting on her knees. Let me explain exactly what's happening here. I developed this compound, let's call it Compound X for simplicity, over 3 years. It's engineered to bind exclusively to apex pulmonary receptors, temporarily disrupting the neural pathways controlling voluntary muscle movement, completely harmless in the long term. No permanent damage, no lasting effects. Why Varix began, struggling against his unresponsive body. Why not kill us? Why not cripple our defenses? Plant explosives? Because that would defeat the purpose, Maya replied. This isn't an act of war, Commander. It's a demonstration. She stood and paced the corridor, stepping carefully around fallen soldiers. Your intelligence reports classify humans as dangerous but technologically inferior. Correct? Your military doctrine paints us as violent primitives who survived our hellish planet through luck and stubbornness rather than intelligence. Your entire strategy for containing humanity is predicated on the assumption that we can only respond with brute force. Varix's compound eyes tracked her movement, his brilliant tactical mind processing her words despite his fury. My mission wasn't to damage your installation or steal your secrets, Maya continued. It was to prove a point about human adaptability. We analyzed your biology, identified a vulnerability, and developed a non-lethal countermeasure that could neutralize your military advantage without firing a single shot. She crouched beside Captain Moores, checking his vitals with practiced movements. 8 hours from now, every affected apex will regain full muscle control with no lasting effects except, perhaps, to their pride. Impossible, Varix whispered, though the evidence lay all around him. No species could develop such a specific compound without extensive biological samples? Access to living apex test subjects? Oh. Maya finished his thought. You're right. We didn't have those. What we had were scattered biological readings from diplomatic meetings, environmental traces from shared spaces, and theoretical models built from evolutionary biology principles. The rest was problem-solving, Commander. The thing humans do best. Varix felt something unfamiliar stirring in his consciousness, a sensation his species rarely experienced. It took him a moment to identify it. Fear. Not fear of death or personal harm. Fear of having fundamentally misjudged an adversary. His entire military career, all his tactical training, had taught him to evaluate threats based on physical capabilities, technological advancement, and numerical superiority. But the human had just rendered all those metrics meaningless with a scientific understanding that had anticipated and countered apex biological advantages. Your species, he said slowly, is more dangerous than we realized. Not dangerous, Maya corrected. Adaptive. There's a difference. We don't want to fight the apex dominion. We want you to understand that if forced into conflict, we won't fight on your terms or using your metrics of military power. That's the message I was sent to deliver. As the truth of her words sank in, Varix looked at the fragile human with new understanding. The lack of natural weapons, the physically unimposing form, these weren't evolutionary failures. They were the trade-offs that had allowed for the development of the most dangerous adaptation of all, a mind that could turn an enemy's strengths into weaknesses. The compound's emergency alarm system erupted in a cacophony of wailing tones, bathing the corridor in pulsing red light. Despite his paralysis, Varix could still hear the central communication system activate with a familiar hiss. Attention all functional personnel, General Thrix's voice boomed through the speakers. The human infiltrator has deployed a biological weapon against our forces. All unaffected troops are ordered to locate and terminate the Deathworlder immediately. Lethal force is not only authorized but required. Maya's expression remained unchanged, though Varix noticed a subtle tension in her shoulders. Right on schedule, she murmured. They'll kill you, Varix stated, no longer a threat but a simple fact. Possibly, Maya acknowledged. Though that would be short-sighted of them. Don't you think? The whine of charging weapons echoed from an adjacent corridor. Reinforcements were coming, troops from the outer perimeter who had not been exposed to her compound. Varix calculated they had perhaps 2 minutes before they arrived. You knew this would happen, he accused. You orchestrated your own execution. I calculated the risk, she corrected. Just as I calculated that you, Commander Varix Null, a decorated veteran of the Proxima Centauri campaign and the only Apex officer ever to spare a human colony during the Tau Ceti conflict, it might be capable of seeing beyond traditional Apex military doctrine. Varix's compound eyes narrowed. You researched me specifically. Of course, Maya replied. I needed someone intelligent enough to understand the message we're sending, even if it came wrapped in his own defeat. The heavy footfalls of armored troops grew louder. Varix found himself facing an unprecedented dilemma. Military protocol demanded he rejoice at the human's imminent execution. Yet his tactical mind recognized the profound implications of what she had demonstrated. Killing her would solve nothing, it would only validate her point about Apex's inability to adapt their thinking. They're coming to kill you, Varix said quietly, and I find myself troubled by that outcome. Interesting, Maya replied, her eyes fixed on his. The compound doesn't affect emotional responses or higher reasoning. That discomfort you're feeling? That's all you, Commander. A squad of 6 heavily armed Apex troops rounded the corner, weapons trained directly on Maya. The lead officer's mandibles clicked in aggression. Step away from Commander Varix, human, he ordered. By order of General Thrix, you are to be executed immediately for acts of biological warfare against the Dominion. Maya stood slowly, hands raised. Commander Varix was just about to explain why that would be a catastrophic diplomatic mistake. Maya stood calmly in the crosshairs of 6 Apex plasma rifles, her posture betraying no fear. Before you pull those triggers, you might want to check your orbital defense grid. The lead officer hesitated, one hand moving to his communication implant. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he received information, compound eyes widening in alarm. 7 unknown vessels just decloaked in high orbit, he reported, voice tight with tension. They bypassed all our detection systems. configuration unknown, but energy signatures suggest significant offensive capabilities. A holographic display flickered to life from Maya's wrist device, projecting a real-time image of Torva 9's orbit. 7 sleek vessels of unmistakably human design held position above the planet's most critical military installation. Standard Earth Diplomatic Corps More Protocol, Maya explained conversationally. My mission was never meant to be suicide. I'm the diplomatic package, delivered personally to demonstrate our seriousness. Those ships have had weapons locked on this facility since before I entered your perimeter. Varix stared at the display, his tactical mind processing the implications. You could have bombarded us from orbit, destroyed our entire command structure with those ships. Yes, Maya agreed simply. Instead, I walked in alone and unarmed to deliver a message. The compound was Phase 1 proof that we understand your biology better than you understand ours. The ships are Phase 2 proof that your military superiority is an illusion we've allowed to persist. The lead officer's weapon wavered. General Thrix demands the humans' immediate termination. And if you comply, Maya countered, those ships will demonstrate exactly what happens when you kill an Earth diplomat. We're not here to start a war, but we've prepared for one. Extensively. Precisely 8 hours after the first Apex soldier had collapsed, Captain Moore's fingers twitched. Then Lieutenant Jax managed to bend a knee. Just as Maya had promised, the paralysis was wearing off exactly on schedule. Perfect timing, she remarked, checking her timepiece. Commander Varix, you should be regaining motor control of your primary limbs now. True to her word, Varix felt sensation returning to his arms. Within minutes, he was able to stand, though somewhat unsteadily. The rest of his squad followed suit, their recovery proceeding exactly as the human had predicted. You kept your word, Varix observed, flexing his forearms experimentally. No permanent damage. Of course, Maya replied. Credibility is essential for diplomacy. The communication system crackled to life again, but this time a human voice emerged. Lieutenant Blackwell, status report? Mission successful, Admiral, Maya responded. I believe we've made our point. Excellent. The Apex High Command has agreed to emergency talks. Their flagship is approaching our position with diplomatic signals. Varix looked at the small human female who had single-handedly neutralized his elite force, infiltrated their most secure facility, and forced the mighty Apex Dominion to the negotiating table, all without firing a shot. What exactly was your message, Lieutenant Blackwell? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Maya smiled. That strange, distinctive human expression that Varix was beginning to understand carried multiple meanings. Simple, Commander. We don't want war. We want respect. She extended her hand, a human gesture of equality. Humans and Apex can coexist, but only if you understand that technological superiority and evolutionary advantages mean nothing against adaptability and innovation. Today I neutralized 20 elite warriors without a weapon. Tomorrow we could disable your entire fleet or help it become stronger. After a moment of consideration, Commander Varix Newell, decorated veteran and proud representative of the Apex Dominion, reached out and took the Deathworlder's hand. I believe, he said slowly, the Dominion has much to learn about humans. And we have much to learn about the Apex, Maya agreed. That's what respect looks like, Commander. Not domination. Understanding. As the human diplomatic ships maintained their vigilant orbit above, representatives of two profoundly different evolutionary paths began the long but complex process of genuine communication. And throughout the Apex Dominion, battle planners and strategists would soon be revising their assessments of the Deathworlders who had just proven themselves the most dangerous and potentially valuable species in the galaxy.